Separation during a marriage is not a harmless holding pattern. CDC data on first marriage separations among women ages 15 to 44 found that about 51% had transitioned to divorce within 1 year and 76% within 3 years. At the same time, attraction research gives us an important clue. Three studies found that perceived responsiveness was associated with greater sexual desire, and separate research using daily, longitudinal, and experimental methods found that self expanding experiences were associated with greater desire and relationship satisfaction. And when I tell you that separation can make a good person panic and start destroying the attraction they desperately want back, I'm not speaking from theory. Lola and I have been together for more than 20 years. We're now more than 10 years beyond a marriage crisis that was serious enough to lead to a divorce petition. When Lola checked out back then, I thought more effort meant more love. I did not understand that my intentions were one thing and the experience of being around my fear was something completely different. Eventually, she moved out. What happened after that forced me to learn the difference between fighting for a marriage and fighting another adult's freedom. Many years later, I worked with a woman living in one country while her husband remained in another. They were married, but distance had turned visits into something that felt more like roommates. They got stuck in a friend zone, if you will. She was facing the same brutal uncertainty. Do I keep trying harder to pull this marriage together, or is the way I'm trying part of what I need to change? So today is not about a trick to make your husband miss you. It's about the four attraction mistakes uncertainty produces during separation and why they make you easier to predict and harder to desire and experience freely, and what you build on your side when you stop trying to force the ending. So today we're going to unpack the separation uncertainty cycle, which is triggered by uncertainty, of course. Now, from uncertainty, what happens is that you end up in what I call, it's a lame behavior. It's called testing. Okay, testing. Okay, from testing, usually you go into chasing. Okay, contrary to what you might tell yourself you're doing, you start chasing and begging for attention. You start chasing and begging for attention. From chasing, you will end up performing, which is not good. Okay, that means you're not being yourself. You end up performing. Let's talk about it, guys. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications, by the way, so you don't miss any of this, guys. Okay, from performing, you start pressuring, not necessarily intentionally, but that's exactly what you end up doing. You create pressure, which is not a good thing. Okay, you create pressure. All right. On the other end, it's not necessarily your intentions. It's almost never your intentions, but that's precisely what happens when you create that kind of pressure. It creates withdrawal, and then you end up back in the same place, uncertainty, and you keep going in that same exact cycle. It's a very destructive cycle, just so you know. Okay, so anyway, my name is Ola with my wife Lola. We are co-authors of the book Red Flag, number one red flag, and Gets My Marriage Back. This book is number one red flag. This one is called Get My Marriage Back. You can find them everywhere that you buy books from. You can also use the links in the description box below. All right. Now, before we dive into today's breakdown, because I'm going to unpack the cycle. If your husband wants separation, you're already living apart, or your marriage is actively in a crisis state right now, you cannot afford to wait for this stream to figure out piece by piece. Just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery and book a one-on-one discovery session with me so we can map out your exact scenario privately. Separation creates uncertainty because you no longer have the normal access you once had to your husband. You do not know what he's thinking. You're wondering what he's thinking. You're attracted to him essentially because you're the one wondering, right? You have anxiety about the future of the relationship, and you don't know what the silence means. You don't know whether distance, right, is creating clarity or moving the marriage closer to divorce. The danger begins when you make removing that uncertainty your daily mission. I know it's counterintuitive, but we're going to talk about it. I'm going to unpack 4 mistakes that you're probably, no, you're definitely making right now. Okay. Mistake number 1 is turning every interaction into a reconciliation test. Let's get started. We're going to complete this together, guys. Okay. Turning every reaction into a reconciliation test. All right. Let's see. Turning every reaction into a reconciliation test. So move this guys down here a little bit. Then we'll put this up here. Boom. There you go. Mistake number 1, turning every reaction into a reconciliation test. Is it making sense to you already? You're probably doing this already, yes? Now, he sends a text message, right? And you wonder whether he misses you. Your life is interwoven together. Children, responsibilities, finances, rent that has to be paid, mortgage that has to be paid. But he just focuses on that in the text message. He comes off as cold. Even when you interact with him personally, he sounds cold. So you assume that attraction is dead, right? He has a good conversation with you. Now, the flip end, right? He has a good conversation with you, and you immediately wonder whether you're getting back together. Maybe this is the beginning of the rest of your life. You're fixing it, right? And the next time there's a delayed reply. He sends a text message, you reply, then it takes him 2 hours. It's the middle of the day, by the way. It's in the office, right? It takes him 2 hours to reply you, right? Or maybe a quiet weekend where he's just in his corner, and then you're taking this as evidence that of something is wrong again. You're wondering what is up to. You have uncertainty. Remember, this crazy cycle is triggered, and it's happening right now, and it's triggered by the uncertainty of the future of your relationship with them. You're in separation. Granted, something got you here, right? So let's say during the separation, there's another visit, right? A phone call, another delayed reply. You just keep going back and forth with how, you're wondering, right? You're wondering, you're panicked, you have anxiety about every interaction. And unfortunately, you're using the very inconsistent element here to test if reconciliation is happening. What's the inconsistency here? It's not him necessarily. It's how you're reacting to every move, right? So with all of this, so obviously you're being driven by fear and panic, right? And nothing good comes out of this place. And guess what? I have experienced that, right? I remember during our own crisis, like about a decade ago, I did not see how much fear was shaping my interpretations of everything. The reality is that you have the power to assign interpretations to life events, right? But when fear and panic has taken over you, you don't know how to use your power, because then that becomes a driving force, right? And most people don't see divorce coming, okay? Especially most people that are on the end of what you might consider to be the rejection end, right? They claim that they don't see divorce coming. You know why? Because they get caught up in their feelings. Naturally so. It's not a matter of, oh, it's my fault, you were wrong, or you're right. In fact, that's part of the lame behavior. Some people, majority of people, okay, cannot think outside of right and wrong, which is why they suffer. Okay, they can't think. It's all or nothing as far as the way they think. That's a problem. That's a major problem, particularly when it comes to romantic relationships. But sometimes people won't listen until they hit rock bottom, and then they have to come up with a better solution than, oh, you're just wrong, right? And you are probably like the rest of us, right? You're going through that right now. This must mean that. This must mean that. So what do? All this interaction, Every interaction, you turn it into a reconciliation test. That is a mistake. That's your mistake number one. So what happens? You go from testing. I mean, if your foundation is already wrong, guess what? Everything else is going to be wrong. So you go from testing, you start chasing. You're begging. You're begging for validation. You're begging to be seen. You're begging to be understood. You're begging to be heard. Again, nothing. It's not about you being wrong, right? It's irrelevant. It's just, again, nonetheless, it's creating the wrong cycle. So, mistake number two, you're using contact, meaning every time you're in contact with this person, you're using contact to reduce your fear, right? Let's put that on here. Using contact to reduce fear. In other words, the moment you're no longer under to reduce fear. The moment you're no longer in direct contact, the fear comes right back. So you're at the mercy of contact. Do you understand what I'm saying now? So we've gone from testing into chasing. All right. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. What do I mean by this, right? Now, wanting your husband is not the problem here. Okay. You're supposed to want your husband, right? Fear-driven chasing is the problem. Panic-driven activities are the one creating the wrong result for you, right? You send another message because the first response did not calm you, right? So they send you a message, your interpretations go crazy on you, right? It must mean that the worst case scenario, of course, right? And then what happens? You move from a place of fear, and then you find another reason to call. You're actively looking for a reason to experience contact with him, right? Because that's the only way you reduce fear and panic, right? So you reopen the conversation, you reopen conversations about your marriage and relationship because yesterday's answer was not good enough. It didn't create the certainty you're looking for. Remember, this cycle was triggered because of the uncertainty, right? It was triggered because of inevitable life event, right? Because these things are going to happen, right? So what happens? You seek a contact to reduce that fear, right? You're looking for external factors to help you reduce your fear, right? So you ask whether he misses you, like you're asking sometimes internally, depends on the nature of the relationship. Sometimes you're outrightly asking a person who is actively trying to run away from you, right? Because you need today's reassurance. It's like drugs. Like you need to get high. You understand? It's addictive. It's an addictive behavior, and it's continually continuing down this path of destruction, right? And if you're not lucky enough, something has to break the cycle. It's either you break the cycle, or nature will break the cycle for you, right? When Lola asked me she said I need space. Okay. By the way, it wasn't the first time I would hear it. It's just that it's the first time I'm on the receiving end of it. The first time that happened in that marriage, I was the one that said it. Yeah. So it came in the form of divorce threats. I can't stand this. I will not accept this. Or I can, I don't have any problem with divorce. Like little subtle shots here and there, subliminal divorce threats here and there, right? Well, of course, I didn't, it wasn't a big deal because I was the one saying it. But the moment she said to me that she needed space, my intentions, of course, were not to be needy, right? Now, if you read the book, you see that she described all of my behavior at that point in time as needy, right? Now, the experience landing on her was neediness, right? When it happened when you flip the other side, I didn't see it that way because, again, when it comes to a man and a woman, they're different fundamentally in every sense of it, right? In terms of our experiences, right? But it's similar. Like some people, the way they react to anxiety and fear is flight, and some people is fight, right? And fight can look different, depends on where you're coming from, right? But the point I'm making here is that either way, fear and panic driven behavior, either you're over apologizing, or you're begging, or you're chasing, or you are running away, or you go stone cold walling and you're just keeping malice all around the house. All of these are abusive behavior and they're destructive. But we don't want to spend too long on just the symptoms. What is the root of all of these issues? Is what me and you were talking about right now. So the distinction for me is when I hit rock bottom, and then I was forced to pay attention to what is it that because for me, my personality is I flip back. I will go extreme and then make threats, and then I will come back, and then I'll be like, oh please, let's work it out together, right? It's confusion at best. Okay. But ultimately, I was looking for contact to reduce the fear that I had. It's mistake number 3. So you go from chasing, now you start performing, right? Performing is like, okay, you want to do the right behavior, but you're doing it from it's not rooted. There's no foundation to it. So it can only last for so long, right? So mistake number 3 is trying to prove that you have changed. Let's put that on the trying to prove that you have changed. Now, what is wrong with that, right? Because after all, change is what we're looking for. Somebody said the best form of apology is, what is it again? Change. The best form of apology is change behavior, right? Change behavior, right? So consistency and change behavior, right? Right. So after all, that's what we're looking for. So what else is wrong? Well, because again, if it's flaky and you can change and revert back, what we call relapse. Like when somebody is going through a rehab, right, and then they relapse, and then it's worse because they try to fast for, let's say you're addicted to food. Let's use a safe method. You're addicted to food, right, and then you fast for the next 3 days, and then the next meal you found, right, you eat that. You eat like 3 plates instead of your normal 1 plate, and then you wonder why you're getting faster. Fasting does not help you lose weight. It's really change behavior consistently, sustainably, right? That's the only way you're going to get healthy. Let me say get healthy. It might not necessarily be about losing weight. So if you're looking for lasting change, right, performance is not the way to go, because performing means you're performing, you're an actor, you come on stage, but then it's just for the temporary, maybe at most, if it's a stage play, at most for the next 90 minutes. And then the character is over, right? You go back to yourself. And that's why performing is a terrible state to find yourself in this crazy cycle. Right? You try to change. You've heard that this is what they want. They told you this is what they want, the kind of change they want in the relationship. And then you try to do it. Keyword try. You try to prove that you've changed by performing. And then so separation becomes an audition, right? So during this moment of separation, right, from your husband, you're using it to audition. You want him to notice your new attitude. Maybe he said you were disrespectful before, so you've heard people tell you that don't be disrespectful, go back to your husband. They tell you go back to your husband, and then there's no deep work done. Right? It's only a matter of time before whatever it is that you guys are cooking will scatter. I've seen this happen over and over again, right? Because it's not rooted, because you feel how you feel, and you can try to pretend all along. You can try to perform and try to be a submissive wife, whatever it is that means, right? You try to be all those things, but if it's not deeply rooted in a why, if that why is not big enough to make you cry, if it's just you wanting what you want, which is the marriage back, it's going to backfire. Okay, right? You change your appearance. You start becoming more patient, right? The little bit of success you had in the past 3 weeks, you want to show it. Like, I'm bringing my money. Can you have my salary? Because he wanted your salary in the first place, right? Maybe he's complaining about your parenting style. Maybe you don't have God in your life. Whatever it is that you're trying to change, you change it, but it's not deeply rooted in your identity and who you are as a person. What I'm trying to say is performing growth for a reaction destroys the whole point. Okay? And if your growth requires that your husband applauds you, that's a problem, right? Because it's still controlling your emotional state, and is controlling your emotional state from another address. That's not going to last. Okay, regardless of how good that sounds initially in the beginning, you just have to look closer long enough, right? And naturally you want to make a difference. If you want something, you want to make a difference, right? And For me, in my story, I had to stop making Lola the audience for my development. I had to stop making her the audience. I didn't need I had to get to a place where I didn't need her to applaud or see or it matters. And that was a lot of work to do. That was big work. It's easier. Like what I'm telling you is easier said than done. Okay. My work became about personal purpose, my personal mission in this life, my personal self-development with or without the marriage, right? It's not a 30-day stunt designed to trigger a predictable response. You know, the no contact 30-day rule, all that stuff, right? That stuff, it's designed. They mean well when they designed it, but oftentimes people do it from a very surface level, and it's not deeply rooted. It won't last, right? It won't last. It won't last. But again, that doesn't stop the cycle, because at this point, the cycle will start to feed itself because you're feeding it, right? So you go from performing to creating pressure. Mistake number 4. Let's talk about mistake number 4. The mistake number 4 that you're making is forcing the future conversation before the experience changes. Forcing the future conversation before let's put it before the experience changes. Ooh, this one is key, guys. This one is key. All right, forcing the future conversation before the experience changes. Yeah, this is probably the biggest mistake right here, right? Now, what do I mean by this? What do I mean? So you've been performing, right? But what happens is that eventually the performance becomes exhausting. You can't sustain it, right? And you still want an answer, right? Right? Are we getting back together? Like, what's all this about? Again, it's not words you necessarily utter, but it's becomes your state, right? Your emotional state. You're still wondering if this person still loves you. You want to know how long. You ask questions. How long is this separation going to take? Right? People want to know what's the average length of separation. Right? Why do people ask that question? It's one of the most commonly asked questions around separation in marriage. Why do people want to know the average length of separation? Because they want to be able to predict when the marriage is going to come back. Never mind everything else that created the marriage, like the persons in the marriage. I just want to know, how soon should I expect this man to say, I want us to work on this marriage, or to accept to go to counseling with you, right? You want them to notice your change now. No, you don't say now. You want to set a time. You want it to be predictable. Remember the mindset of all or nothing. It's either this or that, right? It can never be neither there nor there. It's just, it can never be everything in between, which is how life actually happens, right? It has to be, tell me, so I can feel like you're being genuine. Tell me where you stand exactly, right? So if I tell you where I stand and that will help you with yourself, what's the point of that, right? What about self-work, right? These questions, by the way, they are understandable. It's human nature, okay? But the winners in life, they know how to rise above that. They don't require this before they have stability internally, which is exactly what creates attraction. Why would anybody want to be attracted to you if you can't be self-sustainable on your own? If you don't have a state on your own, a state of being that is peaceful, that creates an experience that we want to come into. Oh, you need me to be stable so you can be stable. That's a problem. That's something that's destroying marriages. When people say you have to create your own happiness, this is what they mean by that, right? Now, obviously, eventually you're a human being. You want what you want. You want to experience give and take, but it doesn't start that way. Especially if you're in a state of crisis, you have to focus on giving. If giving is not enough, give to self. Give to self. Because if you don't do that, what happens? You create pressure on the other side. You start pressurizing the other person, right? The questions you have, the questions you're trying to get answered right now, it's not the problem. But when your husband already associates the marriage with emotional weight, repeated demands for certainty, right? What happens that you're recreating that weight that he's carrying. The weight is not necessarily your fault in the first place, but you're basically creating pressure. And pressure is still pressure when you call it communication. You can call it any name you like, it's still pressure. Okay. So pressure goes right back to uncertainty. Why? Because he withdraws. He withdraws even more. Keep in mind, I've told you this is not about right and wrong. Okay. If there's any level of accountability in this class, it's about self accountability so you can empower yourself. The purpose is what matters. Self empowerment. Okay. Self empowerment so you can become desirable. It's better when they desire you rather than demand that they desire you, in which case it won't be desire. You get the gist? It's about becoming desirable. So what happens when pressuring go back to uncertainty? He withdraws further, the answer becomes less clear because now you're confused even more. You feel the distance again, and now the original uncertainty feels even worse. So you test harder. You go back to testing again. You go back to what you're familiar with because you're still looking for certainty. You're a human being. Human beings, basic need, certainty, security, right? Safety, trust, right? You chase harder, you perform harder. Harder pressures is created from that. And that is the separation uncertainty cycle. You enter the cycle trying to remove uncertainty and ended up producing more, right? Because once you enter this zone, you're pressuring, there's no stopping the cycle. It feeds on itself until nature breaks the cycle, which usually means divorce. Okay? That usually means divorce, guys. All right. All right. So, look, what I'm teaching you right now is a universal roadmap. Every marriage has its own unique landmines. If your husband wants separation and you want me to look directly at the specific relationship blocks underneath his emotional withdrawal and the loss of attraction, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery or use the link in the description or secure one of the discovery slots available in the next few days. Some of you are realizing that separation isn't actually your entire issue. The issue is identifying which pattern underneath the separation is destroying the marriage and which part of that system that you've created, the pattern that you still have that is powering this crazy cycle, and which part of it do you actually have control over so you can start effecting the change you're looking for. And that's exactly what we do at Discovery. Discovery page, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. All right, and we'll take it from there. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications. All right, so if you I want to show you what we call the separation attraction cycle, right? If you stop making your husband's return the measurement of your progress, and a lot of things will change. Okay, but I know you want certainty, right? So, but if you can't measure your progress with their return, what do you do? What do you build on your side? What is it that you build on your side that makes you stronger, makes you desirable, make you more attractive, even while the future of the marriage remains uncertain? See, when the future of your marriage remains uncertain, it's not just you. Actually, that's all of us. Who knows tomorrow? Do you know tomorrow? You don't know tomorrow. But you can look at today's experience and be able to predict tomorrow. So I get that, right? So I want to show you what we call the separation attraction cycle. Separation attraction cycle. All right, and guess what? The answer to uncertainty, because this is still triggered by uncertainty. Let me put this here so you can see. This is still triggered by uncertainty. This is the real world, right? So in the real world, there will be uncertainty. If you're having a real human experience, what makes life beautiful is that you're chasing certainty. I know, right? But winners have no problem chasing certainty. In fact, what happens is that they chase certainty, they figure something out, they sell it to other people as a solution, and they create impact in other people, positive impact. They make money, they're able to take care of their family. All these beautiful things can come from learning how to solve problems, right? So the problem is not uncertainty. The problem is what you do after you experience uncertainty. Okay. No, well, that's not the problem. The point is that it's what you do. You always have two choices, right? You can either go in the direction of testing, right? You have a certainty within your marriage because there's a separation, right? You can go this direction, which I'm going to advise against, obviously, right? You can go down the drain by start to test. It's a crazy cycle that never ends, right? Testing, by the way, is easy, okay? Because it's usually moved from, it's easy from it because you have panic and fear, so you don't have to, it's effortless. Right? So you start testing the other person to create security for yourself. Well, it eventually backfires because, yeah, that's just, it's lame move. It's essentially, it's a lame move, right? The answer to uncertainty is not certainty. You cannot force certainty out of another adult. Your answer is capacity. Okay. And the roadmap is going to have to start with what we call grounding. Okay. Grounding is the beginning of a process, right? So over here we have a framework that we follow. It's called the GPS, and the G stands for grounding, gratitude, and God. Okay. This is very important. All right. Your husband wants space, right? You've concluded. You call it, oh, we separated. No, actually, they separated from you. That's the reality, right? They want out. You guys had a conversation back and forth. You guys have issues, and then he separated from you. Now you desperately want to save the marriage because the average numbers is showing somewhere up to 2 years, but eventually 76 months, not 76 months rather, up to 2 years, 18 months, there's all kind of numbers in terms of how soon separation can happen, which is probably how you ended up on this video, right? You're looking for the average length of separation so you can create certainty that marriage is going to come back. Well, that's not going to bring the marriage back. What's going to bring the marriage back is going through this process. Okay. So he wants space, right? And you sent a message to him, but the message is not answered. You want a conversation. And eventually you manage to get to the conversation. A difficult conversation happens, and all of this creates uncertainty because you don't have clarity, right? But what grounding does is that you stop allowing every event, every interaction to hijack your identity, to dictate your next move. You return back to your higher self. You return back to gratitude, return back to your faith. You return back to your source of truth, right? Not your truth. Your truth is your experience right now, which can be far from reality. Your source of truth. What? How? Like, do you have that? Have you taken the time to really establish what a source of truth is? Because if you go by your truth, which is just your experience, right, which is valid, right? If you go by that, you will keep reacting to your panic and your fear, and then that will continue to control your identity. And your panic and your fear is being controlled by external factors like the weather, like the way they reacted, the way they responded to your last text message. It creates anxiety because you don't have clarity. Instead, you go back to a source of truth, your higher self. You go back to your faith. Going back to your faith is not something, it's not about reading the Bible and then taking one verse and running with it. It's a process, right? It means you start studying, and that becomes your source of emotional stability, because you're going to need that for the rest of this cycle that I'm giving you right now. Okay? Because you're about to create, you're breaking the previous cycle, you're breaking that other cycle, and you have to create another cycle, because life is all about cycles. You understand? So there's no vacuum. Nature does not like vacuum. This is why if you do anything fake or performative, they won't last, right? If you try to become a pick-me woman because some lame man told you that's exactly how to do it, you're going to fail because it's not rooted, it's not grounded, in truth and your identity. Okay, so you have to go back to your source of truth. If your source of truth is something is off with it, then you can work on that. That's all. That's what we call grounding, right? It's like there's trouble going on. There's trouble on the, how do you call it? There's Aegis, an earthquake, right? There's trouble on the mountain, right? Or troubled waters, right? You look for a source, right? You find your footing before you do anything else. Because everything you do, if you don't do that, will fail. If you create any kind of result, it will be short-termed. It won't last. It's not sustainable. Anyway, so you're no longer, when you go to grounded, you're no longer pretending that the separation does not hurt, because the separation does hurt, right? That's why we're not just going to say, snap your finger, change your behavior, and then marriage is fixed, or just run back to your husband, right? That actually, you see people do back and forth a lot, and you wonder why they do back and forth, because they never really go back to the source of truth. It's easier said than done. It's hard. Let me put that on the board for you so you can see. This is a difficult process, right? This is learning how to flip the pain of uncertainty. Okay, so from here we have to go in the direction of purpose. This is the second core pillar. Okay, everything I'm telling you is easier said than done. It's a process that, but guess what? It's the only way out. Okay, if it's the only way out, it's just the only way out. And I know you know that already because you've tried everything else. Okay, and you know everything else does not work. But what do I mean by purpose? Okay, in this we're talking about pain-driven purpose. Okay, pain-driven purpose because you needed the experience that you're going through right now in order to actually have purpose in life. How do I know? Because you're going through it right now, right? This is opportunity to get to ascend to a new level. I know you want to desperately save the marriage. This will create your best chances of creating what's the word, of saving your marriage. Okay, if you save the marriage without going through this process, it will not last. There's a reason why that marriage fell apart in the first place, and you're essentially trying to push issues under the rug without assessing what happened, starting with self. Purpose, very, very important. Okay, I mentioned a client earlier in the beginning, right? And they were living apart, long distance marriage, right? And the distance was not theoretical for her. It wasn't about the long distance physical thing, right? Even when he visited, right, the marriage felt disconnected. It felt more like they were roommates. There was no quick sentence that could remove that uncertainty. See, the uncertainty here is inevitable. It's what you do with it. And the work that we had to give her to really fix this was basically stop making him the answer to the certainty. Listen, life events happen. Things will happen, like things like long distance, things like you move to another country entirely because you're seeking a better life for you and your family, right? It's what do you do with that? It's not about, oh, let's just remove the surface level symptom, which is what the kind of prescription you're going to get the most are basically just to fix the symptom. So if you fix the symptom, the headache will keep coming back. Does that make sense? So the work we do here has to be deeply rooted to help you, particularly when it comes to issues about identity, self is key in all of this. So when it comes to purpose, right, instead of separation becoming destructive whenever your marriage crisis comes back to your head during the course of your day, right, you're going through your day, but the moment you remember, like, okay, my marriage, then your productivity for the day is shattered. When you engage purpose, it expands your life again. It's now you have bigger dreams beyond just about your day-to-day, about your marriage, right? And that's key, because what happens is that when you're chasing and you're creating pressure, it's because you keep making contact because you're trying to reduce fear, and that contact creates unnecessary availability, not just physically but emotionally, right? And the I do mind is the devil's playground. So in this place of purpose, you are re-engaging your life mission, your purpose, the impact, the legacy that you want to leave here on earth. Yes, you too as a lady, you're not just floating around just to multiply into children. You're here to actually create an impact in this world. That's not a kumbaya talk. What I'm saying to you is that the devil's playground is the idol's mind. I butchered that up. The idle mind is the devil's playground. If you're less busy, you have time for BS, and then you will interrupt the work that God is doing on the other person. Because this is a marriage at the end of the day. It's not easy for them to just up and leave. They probably will enter the street and then realize that there's nothing in the street. The street has no love for anybody, right? But if they're trying to run back inside, they need to have a place to come back to, right? But remember, it's not even about them, it's about you. It's about you. I hate to use the word selfish, but there's a chance here that you've lost yourself. You haven't taken care of yourself in a long time. And that leads me to my next point. Purpose creates self-discovery. Purpose creates self-discovery. Self-discovery is not possible without going through this experience. Don't let anybody shame you that you've gone through this experience and it means you're less than. Some people go through this experience in the form of potential divorce. Some people go through it in the form of other things that has nothing to do with the marriage. There's nothing broken about you. You just have to discover your power. You have to rediscover yourself. But when I say self-discovery, there's some things that you've learned about yourself through this, all of this is impossible without the pain of uncertainty, right? This is how you discover yourself. You don't discover yourself by hiding in a cave and pretending that, oh, I'm just going to do me. Oh, I'm just going to stay alone. You can do all that. Okay, life will still show you shiggy. Okay, it has its way to come from a curve. It's a curveball that will be thrown at you from a blind spot. Okay, so self-discovery is a beautiful thing. You're learning about yourself in some interesting ways because you've gone through this experience. You're rediscovering yourself, right? The changes, you're experiencing some changes, right? The key word is experience. It's not change. Let's perform. It's you're experiencing some changes now. It's very easy to run back to the previous cycle, to find yourself back in that crazy cycle. Because remember, this is easier said than done, right? You're going through, especially if you're doing this for the first time, something will keep pulling you back into testing. Let's test. Let's make sure that he's actually responding to it. Something will keep trying. There's a force that's trying to pull you back there, right? Because that's what you're familiar with, right? You're testing, you're chasing, you're trying to prove that you've changed, you're performing, right? You're creating pressure, right? And of course they withdraw, and then you go back through uncertainty again, all over again. Instead of that, we're taking a different route, right? You're discovering yourself. You're asking better questions about yourself. You're asking what is this revealing to you about yourself? What is this crisis revealing about your capacity? Those are better questions. They are harder questions. They are questions that are loaded with English. They're not straightforward yes or no lame questions. They're questions that forces you to go in front of a mirror and ask yourself some really hard questions that will help you hold yourself accountable so you can empower yourself, as opposed to looking for power from the other person. You're taking it, right? So what happens inside you when you cannot control the timeline? Why does silence make you abandon your dignity? Right? The fact that the other person is not responding in due time. You sent a message like the last 3 hours and they haven't responded, and somehow you lose your dignity in that process. Why? What is it about you that's creating that, right? Why does uncertainty turn you into a performer? Why do you become an actor just because you don't know what tomorrow brings, right? What parts of yourself disappeared before the separation ever happened, right? So self-discovery is not about self-blame. It's about empowerment. It's about self-empowerment. It's not about guilt, okay? It's not about, oh, I was at fault for destroying my marriage with my bad attitude. That's nonsense, okay? That's nonsense, okay? It doesn't mean you can't fix your character, but it just means it's not as simple as performing, right? Because if all you're focused on is what somebody labels you as character, you're going to go back to that character. If you're going to change your character, there has to be a why, a strong why enough that's big enough to make you cry. purpose. It has to come, you have to get to self discovery from a place of purpose, not just because somebody manages to manipulate you into performative behavior. You're going to fail. I know what I'm saying here. You know what I'm talking about here. Yes, oftentimes it's change of character, but the reason why you're changing, the purpose behind it is much more is much more important than just the change of character. Okay, because the character is not just driving itself. Okay, your husband's choices belong to him. He can make a choice to fix the marriage or not. You're okay with that. Okay, anyway, let me complete this cycle. I could talk about this forever, right? So from self-discovery we end up in value. Value, you don't have to force it. It's not about moral values. Okay, we're not talking about moral values. It's not about you have to be a good wife. If you're trying to fix your marriage, you're desperately trying to save your marriage, you're probably a good wife. It has nothing to do with that. It's about creating experiential value. These people being around you, you've seen your value, you're working on it because this has been a process, right? You didn't just fall into the middle of value. You've been intentional, starting from grounding. Engaging the process from the beginning is an intentional thing, as opposed to testing, which is you don't need to overthink testing. You just naturally test because you're looking to manufacture trust. You're looking to manufacture safety. You're looking to manufacture artificial security. Okay, now you're creating value, right? So you feel safe with yourself, with or without the other person's reciprocation, I guess. You trust the law of reciprocity. That's why you started the process in the first place. You trust that yours is going to come to you. So now value is being created, experiential value, not moral values. Moral values, when most people talk about moral values, which also tends to be the same thing when they talk about character. These are people trying to play holier than thou. Okay, instead you understand that this is a romantic relationship and you need to create experiential value. People need to find you desirable. They need to be attracted to you, right? So you started the process not because of value, because of yourself, because you're discovering that you're a whole human being in the first place, and your dignity should not have to go with the idea that you want to save your marriage. So when you create value, other people can see it, not just you can see it. Other people, particularly starting with your friends, friendship, right? Your husband, they can see it because you're no longer needing them. You're not coming off as needy. You're not clingy. You're not weird. You're trying to create. You're just being yourself. So they don't see it all. They don't see the process. So what happens? They get curious. They wonder what you're up to, right? They get curious. They wonder what you're up to. Guess what that is? That's equivalent of attraction, right? That's equivalence of attraction. This is what you've been trying to create, guys. That's it. To get here is a process. It's not, everybody's going to look at it and say you're lucky because you did the work. Stop the cap. All of us are lucky because you did the work. So now attraction is happening, right? Now you're not just saying, oh, attraction is happening, and then, it's just something you're experiencing, right? You're not exactly surprised, but you know what you started, right? And now you get to decide if you actually want to go back into that marriage or not. You get to decide if you want to go back into, if it's even worthwhile, because now you're also seeing your self-worth in a different light. You might just realize that maybe I don't want to go back into that marriage. Yeah. Why? Because you know that you have options suddenly, right? And you don't have any problems with uncertainty, because uncertainty in life can still happen, right? But even if uncertainty happens, you know exactly what to do. You go to the right instead of going in a downward spiral into testing. And the more you go through this cycle successfully, you create trust, you create safety, you create certainty, right? You create certainty, but you're not, certainty is just, it's temporary, it's a feeling, right? It doesn't, you understand that this is just life, and then everybody wants to be around you, and of course that includes your husband. your estranged husband, suddenly they want to fix the marriage because you don't need them anymore. Isn't it funny how people suddenly want to be a part of your life when you no longer need them? Okay, exactly. If you've never heard that before, now you know. There's a process. If you find yourself in a place where your marriage has been filled with uncertainty, this is the process that it takes to rediscover yourself, rediscover your abilities, your power, and to make the most out of it. Now, before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. If during today's lesson you find yourself thinking I'm describing your marriage, don't go back to guessing. Don't go back to guessing. You see, knowing the separation uncertainty cycle, this crazy cycle I showed you earlier on, right? And navigating the separation attraction cycle, right? Yeah. Those two things are easier said than done. Okay? All right. But for an average person, skills, support, and a framework system goes a long way. They go a long way, rather. And every marriage is different. It has to be tailored to your specific story. Every relationship has its own history, personalities, and blind spots. Blind spots, the devil. Okay, the blind spots. That's why people that are coming from a high moral place, they always fail. Character, moral values, change your behavior, just be respectful. All that kind of stuff is lame. Okay, people's behavior change because of pain and pleasure. The bottom line, okay, they have to have an experience and then they kind of move in a certain direction, and that's majorly what carries the weight when it comes to romantic relationships. Okay, and your husband asking for separation may sound like the entire problem, but underneath that separation can be attraction loss, it can be accumulated resentment on both parts. You might not see yours because rejection breeds obsession. You might not see yours yet until you get into a place where you've done the work, and then you have to decide if you actually want this person. How can we get you a place where you can actually decide if you want this person or not, right? It can come from pressure, conflicts, constant conflict all the time, family issues, in-laws, another relationship, infidelity, years of emotional distance, fear or patterns that are unique to your specific marriage. And that's why I offer a private 1 hour discovery session. We'll spend 1 hour looking at your specific situation, identifying what's actually happening in your relationship, and then helping you gain clarity on the next best step. So if you're ready for that, simply go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. That's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The link is also in the description and pinned till the comment. Now, giving your husband space does not mean putting your life on hold. Space becomes useful when you use it to reclaim your own capacity. Wanting reconciliation does not make you weak. Requiring reassurance from your husband before you can function, what it does is that it turns desire into fear-driven chasing, begging, apologizing, defensiveness, confusion. Right? Now, working on yourself is not a performance designed to earn his return. In fact, that's the tricky thing, because ideally, I acknowledge that you want to save your marriage. Okay, but I'm telling you that desperately wanting to save your marriage is probably destroying the chances even more. All right, real development remains valuable even before your marriage gives you an answer. Attraction is an outcome from a process, it's not a scoreboard, right? And you want to basically stop testing every reaction for evidence that your strategy is working. And if you do that, you will almost instantly, you will see a change. Instantly. What am I talking about? Instantly. You will get the relief that you're looking for instantly. Okay. And uncertainty returning does not erase your progress, because that's just life. Okay. But now you know exactly what to do, right? It's another opportunity for you to exercise your new capacity, which also creates more trust, certainty, security, safety. People just want to be around you, right? So eventually it becomes second nature, right? And then you're able to say, you know what, I know what I'm doing. Then you're able to, confidently move through life, and then everybody else calls you lucky, and then you're like, yes, of course I'm lucky, but you can see to them that they're just lame and they're losers and they're not willing to do the work. It is, and that's fair. Right? So if this has helped you understand what is going on, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications so you're notified when we go live. And if you're looking for me, you know where to find me. Just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Hopefully you've been enlightened, educated. Take care and God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.